When will we have vaccines ready for COVID-19? While thousands of people around the world are currently in life support fighting for their lives due to COVID-19, millions are sitting at home scared and wondering when we will have a working vaccine to rid us of this plague once and for all. This has hundreds of research teams from all over the world in a frantic race against time to be the first to roll it out. But there's a reason why vaccines take long to develop, and the possible outcomes of scientists, politicians, and big pharma cutting corners to develop the silver bullet quickly are so scary that if things go south, we could end up wishing we had never found a vaccine at all. Join us in today's video while we explore the ins and outs of vaccine development, the current state of the search for the COVID-19 vaccine, and the horrible dangers we could be facing if a badly tested vaccine were to hit the market. But before we do, please give us a like, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell for more videos. So, how do vaccines work? Vaccines are cocktails made to protect us against harmful pathogens like viruses and bacteria by taking advantage of the way our immune system works. During the normal immune response to a pathogen, our immune system produces molecules called antibodies that bind to antigens on the surface of the pathogen, signaling immune cells to come and destroy it. If we survive the attack, and if it was violent enough, the immune system also produces a score of special memory cells, which are basically a small standby army of guards, just in case that virus or bacterium comes around again. These memory cells are specially trained to produce a much faster and effective response to that particular pathogen, killing it long before it gets time to reproduce and cause damages across our bodies a second time. That's when we become immune. A vaccine tricks our body into thinking it was attacked by a deadly virus and sets off our immune response in the hopes of producing lots of antibodies and memory cells for that particular pathogen, therefore giving us an artificially acquired immunity to it. Although this sounds simple enough, but when you find out how vaccines are actually made and the dangers of a badly tested vaccine, you'll stop asking researchers to hurry up and will just let them get on with their work. How are vaccines made? The idea behind a vaccine is simple. Just trick the immune system, right? But how? Well, there are two main approaches. Number one, take the pathogen, coronavirus for example, kill it, and inject the dead virus into the blood. This has the benefit of not producing an infection while providing the antigens that trigger the immune response. The problem is that sometimes this doesn't work at all. There's also the risk that some of the viruses or bacteria could have survived in the first place, getting you sick for real. Number two, infect the person with a very similar live culture yet less harmful pathogen known as an attenuated virus or bacterium. It's easy to guess that both kinds of vaccines pose very serious risks, and that's not to mention other possible unknown short or long-term side effects they may have. That's why vaccines are heavily regulated, and a long process is needed for a working vaccine to hit the market. Keep watching to learn how the process works. How long does it take to develop a vaccine? Developing a vaccine is a long process that goes through 6 major stages. 1. An exploratory stage in which a research group tries out many different vaccines and chooses the most promising candidates. This stage could take anything from weeks to several months. 2. The preclinical stage, which involves intensive testing of candidate vaccines using lab animals such as mice and primates. This stage usually takes several years to ensure it's safe enough to be given to people. 3. Clinical trials. This is the most critical stage, as it involves testing on human volunteers. It is divided into 3 consecutive trials. One with 20 to 100 healthy volunteers to see if there are adverse side effects and to see if it triggers an immune response at all. One with several hundred volunteers, and the final clinical trial, which involves hundreds and even thousands of volunteers. Each individual trial can last several months or even more than a year, making the whole clinical trial potentially last several years. 4. Regulatory review and approval stage, which involves several applications, inspections, and presentations of findings. 5. Manufacturing after the vaccine gets approved. And finally, 6. Quality control. If done in sequence, as is normally the case, the whole process can take as long as a decade or even longer. If you want an actual timeline, the horrible truth is that we haven't even been able to find a vaccine for the first coronavirus that hit us back in 2002, causing the SARS epidemic. That was 18 years ago, and that virus is very similar to the one messing up our lives today. But can't we make them faster? Having thousands of researchers looking for a vaccine instead of just a handful of teams means that we're more likely to find a vaccine for this virus sooner than for most other viruses we've encountered in the past. Sufficient funding can help dramatically speed up the exploratory and preclinical stages, potentially shortening development by several months. We can also speed up the bureaucratic processes behind processing applications and performing inspections, but the overall impact would be minimal. One important step that is being taken by certain companies is to start manufacturing a promising vaccine even before it is sufficiently tested and approved, risking millions of dollars in case it isn't, but saving several more months in case it is. However, there's only so much time we can save, because we still have to go through clinical trials, which represent the longest stage of all. And when you get to that point, cutting corners gets dangerous. Be sure to watch this video to the very end to find out how we learned the horrible lesson the hard way. In what stage of development are COVID-19 vaccines? As of the time of this video's publication, there are currently only a handful of promising candidate vaccines currently in the first stages of clinical trials. Some teams are running production in parallel to the clinical trials, like Oxford University, which is currently manufacturing 30 million doses of one of its most promising vaccines to roll out if clinical trials are successful. A private company called Moderna already proved that its vaccines produce the desired antibodies in some of its test subjects. However, they still haven't been tested against COVID-19 to see whether they really are effective. Another Oxford vaccine conferred immunity to monkeys against coronavirus, but that doesn't necessarily imply it'll work on human bodies. When will we have a working COVID-19 vaccine? It's pretty much rolling of the dice at this point. Hopefully, the few candidates that are currently in clinical trials will be successful, and we could have several working vaccines approved by next year, according to some experts. Others, however, are not so optimistic, since it is very common for candidate vaccines to fail clinical trials for different reasons. If that happens, it's back to square one. If it doesn't, then it's on to production. If the successful case just happens to be the vaccine that is already under production, then a good couple of months would have been saved. In this best case scenario, the soonest we could possibly hope to see the first doses rolling out to the public would be around mid-2021. On the other hand, we must also prepare for the possibility that a vaccine may never be found at all. Will COVID-19 vaccines be safe if rushed for development? That's the big question. As you're about to find out, rushing past regulations and clinical trials can be very dangerous, especially if we plan to immunize most of the world population. Badly tested vaccines can be as deadly or even more so than the pathogens they're supposed to protect us against. This is particularly worrisome if you think about a government desperate for re-election that puts its hopes in claiming a vaccine by the end of 2020, and private companies poised to lose millions of dollars if the vaccines they're already producing aren't approved by that same government's regulators. If push comes to shove, will they make the right choice to ditch that vaccine and start over, all in the interest of public health? And if they approve a vaccine in record time, would you trust your health and your life to their good judgment under these conditions? Think about it and join the discussions in the comments section below. Before you comment though, you'll want to know just what could happen if money and power beat public interests, as they usually do. So sit tight and turn up the volume. The potential dangers of a badly tested vaccine. The lighter side to a bad vaccine would be ineffectiveness, meaning that it really doesn't protect us at all. This is very dangerous in the current situation because it would give people a false sense of security, leading to a huge spike in the number of infections. The second worst outcome would be harmful and dangerous side effects. Things like acute, life-threatening allergic reactions are not uncommon, but the biggest dangers are the unknown mid to long-term effects. Finally, the worst case scenario would be a repeat of what happened with the dengue fever vaccine in 2016, which was administered to millions of Filipino kids, killing almost 1,000 due to an effect called immune enhancement. This horrible side effect is the opposite of what a vaccine should do. Instead of protecting us, it enhances the pathogen's effect, making the disease a lot worse than it normally would have been. Do you still believe we'll see it by early 2021? And if it does come out by then, will you be among the brave first ones to get your shot, or will you wait until a couple of million people have come out unharmed? Join the discussion in the comments section below. We hope this video helped you become more aware about the real dangers behind a rushed vaccine. Please support us by giving us a like, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming videos. If you thought this was interesting, wait till you check out this next video popping up on your screen, where we answer a question in every parent's mind. Is it really safe to vaccinate my kids, and is it good for them? You'll learn the truth behind the anti-vaccination movement and the consequences it already has. Thanks for watching.